keen to crack on. I think we've got 2 more talks and then we'll move on to lunch. So next up is Colin Marriott, who's head of our fleet services at British Gas. As you can imagine, we have an awful lot of people, not only with it as employees within the business, travelling from different sites and going to see clients, but we also have a huge fleet of engineers going out on the roads every day. And our emissions from our fleet activities are actually a significant proportion of our overall carbon emissions. So this is a really, really fundamental area for us, and Colin has probably been leading the fleet industry actually in some of the work that he's been doing. He's going to share some of the initiatives that he's been working on with us, and I think you've recently come from 2 award winnings quite recently, which is very good.
Yeah, we've just last week won 2 significant fleet industry awards, sponsored by Jaguar Green Fleet Awards for Outstanding Achievement Award for the way that we partnered with Nissan and Hitachi in bringing to life globally the largest electric vehicle, commercial vehicle operation today, and also the UK Large Fleet of the Year Award as well. So
fantastic. I will hand over to you. Thanks, Colin.
So yeah, good afternoon all. Thank you for giving me the time to come talk to you about something that myself and my team are very passionate about. I've got 2 challenges really to get this done in 20 minutes. One, in my performance development plan, my boss has told me to try and stop waffling. And 2, I'm very passionate about this subject, so there's a bit of a conflict going on there. And but I will try and rattle through quite a lot of information just to throw at you. It probably would help me if you guys could make mental note of any questions you've got to the end. I'm going to stay behind for the free lunch, and I'll be open to having any discussions with you over lunch. So without further ado, the challenges that face the second largest utility fleet in the UK. If we include Royal Mail, we'd be in 3rd place, and if we include the Ministry of Defence, although I'm not sure they know how many vehicles they've got, we'd be in 4th. But it is a massive fleet. We've got 13,000 light commercial vehicles and 2,500 cars that cover about 140 million miles a year. The responsibility of me and the team is running an £80 million a year operation, and of that 80 million, there's no surprise to you guys that 22 million of that is on fuel, so fuel is a significant cost. Our workforce clearly depends on what we do and what sort of vehicles we give them. We have a responsibility to make sure, as far as possible, that they get to the customer's doorstep on time, every time. And another aspect of fleet which takes more focus than even our environmental reduction challenges is safety. Driving is well known throughout the business as being the most dangerous thing our guys do, so we spend a lot of time on road safety. Moving on to the environment, I mean clearly as we already heard earlier from Gab and Mike, corporate responsibility is a big deal for Centrica, and as we already heard, we had a 25% reduction target from 2007 baseline to achieve by 2015. Thanks Chris for reminding me that fleet contribute heavily to the internal carbon footprint. In fact, it's 60%, so it's a huge element of carbon that we emit by operating our business each year. About 60,000 tonnes of carbon are emitted by our vehicles in their journeys. And fleet were tasked as part of property and travel and everything else to achieve a 25% reduction, which I'm really proud to say we're slightly ahead of target this year so far. So our roadmap is really fundamental. When we're choosing vehicles, it's absolutely critical that we have got a vision looking forward as to what sort of technology is coming available, and indeed actually where we've got so much buying power in the fleet industry, encouraging manufacturers to bring to life certain technology, as we did with Nissan. We'll talk about that shortly. But we need to be very clear where we're going with our vehicle technology, whether it's engines, electric, hydrogen, etc. Today, and in fact since 2005, some of these technologies we've been using. We were the first organisation to mass deploy top speed limitation. So trucks had to have it legally. We enforced this in 2005. It's not a major contributing factor to reducing carbon, but it saves lives, and that's why we did it. And a lot of companies are now doing that. All of our vehicles are equipped with GPS, and we take it a stage further where we've got onboard diagnostics, so we can read from the vehicle's own computer systems the state of the vehicle. We almost get a dashboard view, so if an airbag light's on or a brake warning light, we read the mileage from the vehicle, not from the fuel card, and we can plan our journeys a lot better. This has been a major contributing factor to our carbon reduction. We are much smarter at deploying our engineers now, and in fact since about 2007, where we were averaging 12,000 miles per year per van, we're now averaging on about 9. So you see smart deployment is critical, and we put a lot of emphasis in driver training because you can apply all this technology. I think some of you guys asked a question earlier on about behavioural change and how do you influence that in a building around energy efficiency. In vehicles, you can give the guy the best van, but if he drives it like a nut, you can see a variation of 35% we see across our fleet between a fuel efficient driver and a non-fuel efficient driver. And a non-fuel efficient driver is an unsafe driver. They go hand in hand in our minds, so we address about 2,000 engineers and car drivers each year, put them through various training programs. We don't sheep dip everyone into a training program. We concentrate on our high-risk drivers, which we can tap from telemetry. So there's a big push over the next few years about enhancing how we use that. And clearly we need, when we're placing massive orders on vehicles, we need to future-proof for our business, because we have to make sure that what we choose today has got the operational resilience to be able to deliver through its life cycle. When you buy, I guess when you guys are buying buildings, you're thinking 25, 30 years down the line. We're thinking at least the life cycle of a vehicle, 6 or 7 years. And technology is advancing at a rapid state in vehicles at the moment. So we have to future-proof it for what technology is coming down the pipeline and also what our business needs. What we see in our technology roadmap for commercial vehicles, cars are always a stage further forward because the manufacturers can invest in later technology, more expensive technology in cars quicker than vans, because generally vans are a lot cheaper and they have to be able to mass market it to make it affordable. But in our van fleet, we're already taking Euro 6 engine technology in some cases. We think hybrid technology will come to life in commercial vehicles. For us, though, we've got the jury's out on that one a bit, because it tends to increase the unladen weight of the vehicle quite a lot. You've got a battery power, you've got an engine, you've got more maintenance, and inevitably the vehicle will cost a lot more. So in a total cost of ownership model, it doesn't stack. But smaller capacity engines, we've been on this mission for some time, and we've really been pushing the motor manufacturers, and European legislation has helped us, and that's why half of our fleet now are now only running 1600cc diesel engine technology. And you're seeing it in passenger cars, cars coming out with 1 litre. If anyone watched Watchdog last night, Fiats with 1.2 litre petrol engines where they can't go up to 1 in 10. They haven't got enough guts, but we won't touch on that. The use of electric vehicles is really important to us, and we'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. And alternative fuels. We think petrol is going to become an in-fuel again through direct injection petrol engines, a bit like diesel engines. Compressed natural gas, we would love to use compressed natural gas, obviously. We provide gas to more than half the homes in the country. And it is a good fuel, especially when you're looking at tailpipe emissions and not just CO2. So carbon monoxide and particulates are reduced. But it's the infrastructure, it's the age-old thing with all the worries around electric vehicles. We were running compressed natural gas vehicles 20 years ago, and we had our own fast fill compressed natural gas sites. Cost about £250,000 to put one in. And I think hydrogen is going to face the same challenge. For having rapid fill hydrogen fuel stations, we're going to be very dependent on support from the government and that lot to create the infrastructure to make it an attractive fuel. So carbon still remains really a centre point of our focus right now, because we've got these challenges in our business to reduce our carbon footprint. But fleet already now start to look further down the line around what was going to happen legislation-wise that's going to force us to rightly look at tailpipe emissions, especially particulates. They claim 30,000 people a year die of respiratory disease as a direct result of road transport emissions through particulates. So we know city centres like London, we know Boris is already talking about it. We know that he faces a 30 million EEC fine coming down his way, that he's going to have to do something to clean up the air in London, and we know this will eventually roll out further across the country. So again, when we're future-proofing our fleet, we've got to think about these guys are going to be able to service our customers in these areas. So electrifying our fleet, what's the choices that we have to make when we're focusing purely on electric? But a lot of these disciplines roll into just good practice when acquiring fleets, and that is that the vehicle must be fit for purpose primarily and deliver the benefits within the life cycle. So there's little point in us putting technology on the road that actually won't enable the engineers to do their job. I know it sounds very simple, basic, but I have worked in fleet teams and heard of fleet teams, where you deliver a vehicle and you find out it hasn't got enough payload or operating capacity for the job it's got to do. So primary objective has got to be fit for purpose, and we put a lot of work into making sure it is. And we have to have this forward vision of what the customer thinks where its business is going to go over the next few years, so future-proof. Safety is absolutely paramount. We do a huge amount. I'm really proud to say that in the last 1.8 billion miles our commercial fleet has operated, we have not had a single driver fatality, and we invest heavily in safety. Our big issues today are cyclists and motorcyclists. That's where our efforts are going to try and come out with technology and training that helps prevent incidents with those. Clearly we operate in an urban environment, so there's lots of them about and pedestrians. Total cost of ownership model, we have an enormous model, as you'd expect, where we plug in all the various elements of operating the fleet, and out pops the end a cost. And I would not be in this job very long if I went to the executive committee, as I'm about to ask for £110 million to spend on new vehicles, and put forward a case where it's going to be more expensive to run this sort of technology. We're a business, and we've got to make sure we do what's right in terms of the finances. As I said earlier, at the moment we're using 1.6 fuel efficient diesel engines. In fact, the bulk of our fleet are Volkswagens. We're the largest fleet operator of Volkswagen outside of Germany. Much smaller engines, and we are remapping engine unit electronic control units. So happy to talk about that with anyone after lunch. But we've seen through trials, by adjusting the engine's map, which controls the fueling of the engine, to our duty cycle with our vehicles at fully laden condition, we're seeing about 8 to 11% improvement in fuel efficiency, which is awesome. So we're about to do that. And there's good cost savings associated with doing that sort of thing, and that filters through even to road fund license. You can see the difference of £65 by getting our average CO down below 150 grams. So 65 quid times 13,000 vehicles is a lot of money. So we also, as I said, we're looking at telemetry to identify unnecessary idling. It is a problem on our fleet because engineers haven't got offices to go to. They're home based, they get their work, they go to work, and throughout the day they have to park up and make calls and things like that. So they run their engines in the winter to stay warm, but in the summer we give our guys air conditioning. We're probably the only large fleet in the country that does so, because we think it creates a more safer environment for guys in the summer, and these vans can get up to 40 degrees ambient temperature inside, so we don't want our engineers turning up at customers' homes frustrated and sweaty and what have you. So we've got to monitor it and try and reduce idling as much as we can. And of course driving behaviour, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, and speeding in posted speed limits. They're the three parameters that we really home in on to try and check out their behaviour. As I said about hybrids, that technology is commonplace in cars, and we think that might come into the commercial vehicle arena. Electric is starting to get feet. What I mean by that is, in just the first 6 months of this year, the sale of electric cars and commercial vehicles, the cars mainly, is starting to take off. There are over 7,000 vehicles on the road now. So I think the time is, the technology has arrived, and it's how we embrace that technology into the future is important, and training, as I said. From a fleet perspective though, it's always been, are you a petrol fleet or are you a diesel fleet? And in either case, you tend to run your entire fleet on that type of fuel. The future for big fleets, well, little fleets as well, thinking about it, is it will be a range of fuels depending on the deployment. So a portion of your fleet will be diesel, the high mileage fleet, a portion will be electric, those are operating in the right urban environment, etc., etc. So why electric vehicles? For us, it does contribute heavily to our carbon reduction strategy. It is part of that strategy, and without it we won't achieve our target. We set out our stall, as we said, back in 2007, and our journey with electric vehicles started about 2.5 years ago, and I'll talk about that in a sec. It does address all clean air issues. You get zero tailpipe gases, so NOx and particulates in particular we think are going to become very important to reduce. And correctly deployed, it is cheaper to run. So if you're trying to reduce your fleet operating costs from 80 million downwards, if you can get this technology working right, it saves you money as well. So a lot of people think it's going to be more expensive. It's a really bold step, and it's worth it. In certain cases, we've proven it, and we're probably one of the first to have the sort of data to prove that it works. And the trial that we've done has underpinned all of this. So the van was very well accepted by the engineer. One of the things that, well, apart from the fact that the vehicle has got automatic transmission in effect, so that reduces a lot of driver fatigue, so the engineers really like that. It's got some other really nice features on the van. We had heated steering wheel and heated seat fitted, because we wanted the engineers to feel warmer in the vehicle and not be so dependent on the cab heater, so that it didn't reduce their range. And we have worked with the manufacturers and convinced them that's what we need. And one of the other features they really like is when they're plugged in at home, because all these guys are home-based, so we have to create the charging infrastructure at home, and we'll talk about how we do that in a minute. But when they get up in the morning on a cold day and their van's all icy and covered in snow, they can hit a button as they get out of bed on their car remote, and it will defrost the vehicle and get it up to working temperature before they unplug it. It extends the vehicle's range by doing so, but it's a feature they love. Electric vehicle costs are lower than expected. We've proven that in general deployment, if you can get them out there on the road with 7,000 miles per annum, you will save 10%. If you deploy them in London, you'll save up north of 30% because of the congestion charging. But you've got to deploy them. If the vehicle range is 70 miles, you want them doing 65 a day, because that's where you get your fuel savings. There's no point putting an electric vehicle on the road and only doing 5 miles a day. We did 28 vehicles on the test programme. We wouldn't buy any vehicles until we put them through an arduous winter. We didn't really get an arduous winter, but the vehicles performed very well in the north of England, around Gateshead and in Scotland. As I said, overall we saved 10%. That's the entire operating costs. And the running costs surprised us, because we budgeted a lot more energy consumption than we really achieved. On average, it's costing us £25 a month to charge an electric vehicle at home. The typical fuel budget for those vans are about £1,500 a year. Our vision is 10% of our fleet is 1,300 vehicles by the end of 2017. That's a big ask. Deploying the technology is hard. You've really got to understand the drivers, where they live, have they got off-street parking, can we install a charging point at their home? So you can't just deploy this stuff anywhere, it just won't work. But we're on that mission of 10% of our fleet. We're going to obviously adopt other viable fuel-saving technologies, as I said, the driver training, etc. And we do believe hydrogen is a fuel of the future. We're not sure when it's going to land, but at the moment, although we've only just launched electric vehicles, we're already starting to talk to people about developing a small additional hydrogen fuel cell that we can put on the electric van to actually increase its operational range and enable us to deploy it a lot easier. In terms of infrastructure, in Gab's team, in fact in Mike's team, we've got a group of guys that are really good at helping people choose the right charging solutions and installing them. We partner almost all the OEMs, the car makers that bring electric vehicles into the UK. They choose British Gas to install charging points. So we're capable, and we have already installed thousands of charging points at people's homes, domestic, car parks. You can read the list. Obviously, if you guys need any help around charging infrastructure, this team can consult, they can survey, they can install. And they do a really good job. Not a sales pitch, I think it's great to know that we can provide this level of service. And I think one of the other things that's really important about infrastructure is once you've got it in the ground, you do have to maintain this stuff, and you will start to see at motorway service stations occasionally, you'll see the rapid chargers out of action. And we're capable of maintaining this stuff in very short timescales. I don't know how much you guys are involved or know much about O-level officer low emission vehicles, but there's been a lot of confusion this year about what's going to be happening moving forward around grants. So I'm pleased to say that whilst they stalled the grant for free installation at home, domestic properties, they have now committed to a new scheme that's going to come through in April 2015, which, you know, really, if you're considering electric vehicles, you really need to look out for, because there is more funding coming down the line. In the meantime, we do have a sort of a hybrid solution with OLEV where they will contribute 75% to a charge point installation that is capped at 900. I think, without going through every other point there, that probably covers it. Quite a lot of funding coming down the pipeline still from the government, so clearly the government is still right behind EV deployment. So I think that just about sums it up. Just play this little video.
Even from the little touches like the keyless entry or the heater on the morning, heating your van up and your windscreen, clearing your windscreen for you. Nothing out there like it at the moment. On the screen it basically tells you where you are, how far away your charge stations are, and also how to get to your charge stations. The range in the vehicle's excellent. You can do your city driving where you just go in short distances, but you can also do the longer journeys through the countryside because the range can cope with that kind of thing. So total reassurance. It's made working life a lot easier. Your parts are segregated, so you know where each individual item is. Plus you can get the customer fixed quicker. You get in, you take your charge off the charge station and plug it into your van, and that's basically it. 30 minutes for one charge. Compared to the diesel prices, the savings will be unprecedented really. The fact that you're not adding to the carbon footprint and that kind of thing, it all adds up. The city driving the car is pretty much perfect. All you've got really is an accelerator and a brake, nothing else to worry about whatsoever. A lot of people have said that we're pioneers, not just us who are driving the cars, but British Gas in general. So yeah, I think every engineer who gets in these vans are pioneers for their company or for themselves.
Thank you. We've got no time for questions really, have we? So, do you think?
It's probably a bit tight, so yeah, if you've got any specific questions, if you grab Colin, you're going to be around at lunch.
Lunchtime, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good to catch up. Thank you.
Thank you very much.